All right, how many times have y'all heard folks say, oh, Biden, Harris, they ain't doing nothing for black people? You don't see them doing anything to address police brutality and what's happening with all these cops out here? Now, I done told y'all that's a flat out lie on many occasions. The Department of Justice under Biden Harris has been the most aggressive civil rights division since Robert Kennedy was Attorney General. Today, the DOJ announced what has been taking place, the blatant racism taking place in Lexington, Mississippi. Folks, their findings show that the Lexington, Mississippi Police Department had a pattern of using excessive force, unlawfully jailing people, discriminating against black people. This follows, of course, where their officers were busted and went to prison for brutalizing African Americans. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clarke, who heads the Civil Rights Division, details the investigation's results during a Zoom call today with news media. Watch this.
We are here today to announce the findings from our pattern or practice investigation into the city of Lexington, Mississippi, and the Lexington Police Department. We find reasonable cause to believe that the Lexington Police Department and the city of Lexington engage in a pattern or practice of conduct that violates the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments of the Constitution, the Safe Streets Act, and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Specifically, we find that the Lexington police use excessive force, unlawfully stop, search, and arrest people, including by jailing people on illegal, quote, investigative holds, end quote, unlawfully jail people without affording prompt access to court, violate the rights of people engaged in free speech and expression, including by retaliating against critics of the police, and unlawfully discriminate against Black people. The department also unlawfully arrests, jails, and detains people based on their failure to pay money without assessing their ability to pay. Unlawfully arrests people just because they owe outstanding fines, and imposes money bail without justification and again without assessing ability to pay. The fact that fines and fees fund the department drives its law enforcement, resulting in a crude policing for profit scheme. The Lexington Police Department operates under an unconstitutional financial conflict of interest. Lexington's focus on revenue and its overly aggressive form of policing leaves the people of Lexington feeling harassed, helpless, and hopeless. For example, on the day that we opened our investigation, Lexington officers chased a man down and tased him until he foamed at the mouth. In the previous months, police officers had repeatedly arrested the man for minor offenses that most police departments would have handled with a ticket. For stealing sugar packets from a gas station, the man spent 13 days in jail. He spent 4 days in jail for taking a second cup of coffee after paying for the first. Each time, the Lexington police kept him in jail because he could not afford to pay the fines or the $50 processing fee Lexington charges for every arrest. Especially for a person in poverty, these fines are no small thing. Even though he has no money, the man owes the Lexington Police Department over $7,500. At no point did the police or city assess his ability to pay those fines. In America, being poor is not a crime, but in Lexington, their practices punish people for poverty. We cannot stand for the criminalization of poverty in this country. On February 29th, we provided official notice to Lexington city officials and the police department about our concerns regarding illegal arrests and detentions that penalize people for lacking resources. Lexington has made modest changes, but as today's findings show, more meaningful reform is necessary. Lexington's fines and fees have been absolutely devastating for the people who live there. Although Lexington is one of the poorest counties in America, people owe the police department $1.7 million in outstanding fines. The Lexington Municipal Court has issued bench warrants for over 650 people based on unpaid fines, equivalent to roughly half of Lexington's population. Based on these warrants, police officers have unlawfully arrested and jailed people using the leverage of incarceration to extract more money from them. Other times, the Lexington police send people to jail for days or weeks for minor offenses. People are left to languish in jail until they can go before a judge or they can scrape enough money together to pay their fines. This, too, violates people's civil rights. For example, the Lexington police arrested a Black man for allegedly taking $15 worth of gas. The police told him the fine was $300. He couldn't pay it. The police sent him to jail until the next scheduled court date 2 weeks later. Unjustly enforcing fines and fees creates a two-tiered system of justice that can perpetuate a cycle of poverty. It also fuels a financial conflict of interest for the police department. The police must enforce the law even-handedly, not based on generating revenue. Lexington, though, focused its law enforcement on strategies that generated income, even at times linking police officers' paychecks to the number of arrests they made. Over the past 2 years, Lexington has made nearly one arrest for every 4 people in town, more than 10 times the per capita arrest rate for Mississippi. The Lexington police also illegally arrest people for using profanity, and they retaliate against people who simply film officers or criticize the police. The First Amendment protects swearing, yet the Lexington police broke down a man's back door and arrested him for swearing in a public space. The First Amendment also protects the right to film or criticize officers. But when a man filmed officers approaching his suicidal brother with their guns raised, a police officer batted the man's phone out of his hand, pushed him to the ground, and arrested him. While making arrests, the Lexington police frequently use excessive force. We found instances in which officers used a taser like a cattle prod to punish people or to make them comply more quickly with officers' orders. For example, officers used a taser to shock a Black man 18 times until he was covered in his own vomit and unable to speak or talk. Officers punch, hit, or kick people who are unarmed and handcuffed. One officer kicked a Black man in the groin so hard that he wet himself. Another used his gun to repeatedly hit a Black man already in handcuffs. Another officer knocked an elderly Black man unconscious. Nor are children spared from attack. An officer grabbed a Black child by the neck and shoved him into a patrol car, banging the child's head against the door frame. Black people bear the brunt of the Lexington Police Department's illegal conduct. Lexington's former police chief, Sam Dobbins, who regularly spoke disrespectfully to Black men, set in motion the aggressive enforcement of low-level violations. Dobbins left the department when recordings of him using racial slurs were released. Officials told us that with Dobbins gone, so too was the problem. We found, however, that the discriminatory practices he initiated continue unabated. We found, however, We also found that Lexington officers frequently tase, punch, and beat Black people without justification, while we identified no such use of force on white people. Low-level traffic violations that resulted in arrest for Black people yielded only warnings or citations for white people. The result, 98% of people arrested for traffic offenses are Black. This pattern of racial discrimination not only violates the law, it also erodes the community's trust in law enforcement, the judicial system, and the government more broadly. According to the Bureau of Justice statistics, half of America's police departments have 10 officers or fewer. Every person in the United States enjoys certain fundamental rights, regardless of the size of their town, the contents of their bank account, or the color of their skin. Residents of rural and underserved communities have the same rights and deserve the same protections as people who live in major cities. The Justice Department is committed to providing that protection. Police misconduct in smaller communities may not always garner national attention, but rest assured the Justice Department is watching. No city, no town, no law enforcement agency is too large or too small to evade our efforts to safeguard the constitutional rights that every American enjoys. Small and mid-sized police departments must not be allowed to violate people's civil rights with impunity. Lexington is a small rural community, but its police department has had a heavy hand in people's lives, wreaking havoc through use of excessive force, discriminatory policing, retaliation, and more. For too long, the department has been playing by its own rules and operating with impunity. It's time for this to end. To the people of Lexington, I want you to know that we heard you, we listened to your testimonies, and we thank you for having the courage to speak up. The Lexington Police Department and the city of Lexington have agreed to cooperate with the Justice Department to address the serious challenges we outlined today as we begin the hard, essential work of rebuilding trust and restoring equal justice under law. We need to continue to hear from the Lexington community in the coming days and weeks. We stand with the people of Lexington to extend justice to all its residents, rich and poor, regardless of their race.
I need every Black man and every Black woman who's even thinking about voting for Donald Trump to come here and pay attention to what I'm about to tell you right now. What you just heard from Kristen Clarke, who heads the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice under President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, is egregious. It is shocking. It is pathetic. It is degrading, and it is demeaning. And what you just heard would never happen under Donald Trump. Let me remind y'all, Donald Trump, when he went to the Oval Office, he named Jeff Sessions his Attorney General. They tried to get out of the Baltimore consent decree. A federal judge and the city said, absolutely not. They tried to get out of a consent decree in Chicago. Jeff Sessions literally said, and we're gonna find a clip for y'all, we need to pull back on these police and patterns and practices investigations because the cops are suffering from low morale. Bill Barr, who replaced Jeff Sessions, said the exact same thing. So how can you call yourself somebody who cares about Black people, and you care about justice, and you care about equality, and you know damn well that there is a 180-degree difference between a Trump Department of Justice and a Biden-Harris Department of Justice? And there's going to be a big difference between a Trump-Vance Department of Justice and a Harris-Walz Department of Justice. The facts are there. This administration has had more than a dozen police pattern and Practices investigations. They have been investigating police departments all across the country. They have been putting rogue cops in prison. They have been putting individuals committing hate crimes in prison. Can we say the same thing about the Trump-Pence Department of Justice? Absolutely not. I am not confused by any of this. And there is no way in hell any self-respecting black man or black woman or any person of conscience will be willing to vote for a thug like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, knowing full well that they would never pick someone like Kristen Clarke to run the Civil Rights Division. That they don't care about people who are being beaten and humiliated. You heard her detail cops arresting people who swore at them knowing full well that's not against the law. Arresting people for a cup of coffee and putting them in jail for multiple days after the man had already bought a cup of coffee. If you want to see the biggest example of a difference between a president, a Democratic president, and a Republican president, all you got to do is look at the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. But let me also add this as my final point before I go to my panel. The Civil Rights Division under Kristen Clarke, they've also been going after redlining. Did Trump go after redlining? No. Please, by all means, show me how aggressive Trump and Pence was when it comes to going after these banks for discriminatory practices against African Americans. I'll wait. Because you can't find it. Y'all can play games all y'all want to. And in 41 days, we will elect a new president. And I'm telling you right now, there's no way in the world I will consider voting for anybody who wants to give cops 100% immunity. I would never vote for somebody who wants to say to the cops, do as you wish. Whatever you want to do, knock some heads if you want to. And you just heard how this small police force in Lexington, Mississippi, and this ain't just Lexington, Mississippi. This is police forces in small towns, in rural America, in big cities, red and blue, need an aggressive Department of Justice overlooking them. Black man and black woman, do not be fooled. All you brothers out there talking about, yeah, Trump gonna put that money in my pocket. I'm gonna get some stimmies. No, you're not. But I can guarantee you this, he gonna bring back stop and frisk. I can guarantee you this, he's gonna allow cops to knock black men upside their heads. So y'all go ahead and play around if you want to. And don't come crying. If he wins, don't come crying later. Oh my God, where's Ben Crump? Where's Harry Daniels? Where's Lee Merritt? Can I take, where's Reverend Al Sharpton? Where's the NAACP? You gonna say that if you sit your ass at home? You gonna say that if you vote for Trump? I'm telling y'all right now, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, it ain't even, they not even in the same planetary system when it comes to holding rogue cops accountable. My panel, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, out of Washington, D.C., Lauren Victoria Burke, Black Press USA, coming to us from Arlington, Virginia, and Joy Chaney, joining us down, founder of Joy Strategies of D.C. as well. I had to make this point as clear as possible, Greg, because I see all these folks and they're commenting on the posts that I'm making, others on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and all different fan base, Tumblr, all social media. Oh yeah, Trump. Oh yeah, I'm down with Trump. I ain't down with her. I ain't down with the prosecutor. Yeah, Trump has made perfectly clear. He supports stop and frisk. He supports 100% immunity for cops. He does not support the George Floyd Police and Justice Act. He does not support holding cops accountable. Every black person listening had better understand, Greg, that you are going to see cops running rampant in our communities because they will have a MAGA red hat wearing fool in the nation's capital who will tell the Department of Justice, don't you investigate them. And for anybody to think I'm lying, y'all mad about that brother Marcel Williams being executed? Well, that same Republican governor in Missouri said he's going to pardon a cop who was found guilty of crimes in Kansas City. You got Greg Abbott, who pardoned the white man who killed the white Black Lives Matter protester at the protest in Austin. Folk had better realize absolute police thugs will be in charge if Donald Trump prevails against Vice President Kamala Harris.
Of course, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You know, last night in class, we were talking about Reconstruction. We were reading a chapter in Derek Bell's casebook on Reconstruction and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And, you know, one of my students over at Howard Law School made an observation. He said, you know, there's a reason why in this country that it took me coming to law school, my third year of law school, to have a sustained conversation about something that we learned nothing about in high school and I didn't learn anything about in college. I said, you're absolutely right. This is the most important period in U.S. history for us to study is Reconstruction. And as you've talked about many times, Roland, what comes immediately after Reconstruction in this country is what the white boys, what the crackers called the redemption movement, the white lash movement, what Rayford Logan, historian, called the nadir, the dark period for African people, requiring us to undertake a second Reconstruction to make those Civil War amendments stand up, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, in the 1950s and 60s. And since the 1960s, what these practitioners of devilment, I'll stop short of calling them devils, but only very closely short, have been doing ever since is trying to roll back not only the 1960s, but the 20th century. The vigilante force known as the police in this country, the patter-rollers, are licking their chops at the prospect of one of their own, an open white nationalist, assuming the vice presidency. I'm talking about Junior Varsity Vance, who threw, of course, his own family under the bus, who's currently throwing his wife under the bus and his children under the bus as he practices this form of hatred of everything non-white in his form of his immigrant shaming and blaming and falsifying descriptions of them. But the president of the United States, the malevolent force known as Dementia J. Trump, or Donald Trump by some, he is the wild card that will enable Junior Varsity Vance, who is a hardcore ideologue. Why? Because Donald Trump doesn't believe in anything but himself, and he'll say anything and he'll let people do anything. That license, the license that we'll see in a little town, not even an hour outside of Jackson, Mississippi, where they follow a man home based on tint on his windows and tase him for 15 seconds, where they lock up a man for swearing at the police. These white boys are the Klan. They are the Klan of the 19th century. They are the Redeemers movement. They are the Knights of the White Chameleon, the Ku Klux Klan. And they are licking their chops at finally taking the next quantum leap toward redeeming themselves in terms of white supremacy. That's what Make America Great Again means. And finally, I'll say this. For all the people out there who think that somehow Donald Trump might be better for you if you're of African descent, you've opened your mouth and you've put your whole rotten brain on display. You've demonstrated that you are a danger, not only to yourself, but to the rest of us.
Lauren, there's somebody who's watching, Lauren, and they're saying, Roland, Trump doesn't believe those things. I'm a black man and Trump stands with me. Really? What I'm about to play for you is literally on his campaign website. This is where I found it. All you brothers who hollering Trump, Trump, Trump. Oh yeah, Trump. Oh yeah, I'm down with Trump. Listen to this.
Because the Democrats want to take those protections away from our police, because we want them to do their jobs, and we want them to do their jobs right. You can't take their protections away if you're going to have them do their jobs properly. Second, to qualify for this new funding and all other Justice Department grants, I will insist that local jurisdictions return to proven common sense policing measures, such as stop and frisk. Very simple. You stop them and you frisk them. Strictly enforcing existing gun laws against convicted felons, cracking down on the open use of illegal drugs, and cooperating with ICE to get criminal aliens off our streets and get them out of our country. Third, we will go after the radical Marxist prosecutors who are abolishing cash bail, refusing to charge crimes, and surrendering our cities to violent criminals. They have surrendered like never before. I will direct the DOJ to open civil rights investigations into radical left prosecutors' offices, such as those in Chicago, LA, and San Francisco, to determine whether they have illegally engaged in race-based enforcement of the law. I will also work with Congress to give the victims of their Marxist policies the right to sue local officials for harm and suffering, and it has been great that they have caused. If your small business is pillaged because shoplifting goes unpunished, if you're brutally attacked by a violent felon released without bail or bond, then you will be entitled to massive damages. Fourth, I will order the Department of Justice, or some people call it the Department of Injustice right now, and Homeland Security dismantle every gang, street crew, and drug network in America. Every single one of them will be dismantled. We already know where these turf wars and drug dens are. We know who the people are.
All right, so come back to me. Lauren, if any of these brothers out here, y'all voting for that? Okay. Let me know how that's gonna go down, Lauren.
Yeah, I don't really buy into the idea that there's a ton of black men out there voting for Donald Trump or planning to vote for Donald Trump. I think that has been overplayed on CNN in particular and the New York Times. They seem to love to present some outlier example of some black male who wants to vote for Donald Trump. And then when the election actually happens, which we have now two examples, 2020 and, of course, 2016, that show us that, of course, the most dedicated group for the Democratic Party is black women, followed by black men. And so in talking with Mondale Robinson and other people who know a hell of a lot more about this than I do, I'm not seeing what I would consider to be hard evidence that there's a ton of black men out there burning to vote for this lunatic that is running for president again. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing is we just got, of course, a huge report this week that crime is down, violent crime is down, 20-year low. And, of course, as you know, Roland, the Republican Party has been saying the same thing really since the late 1960s with regard to crime and law and order, which is the way that they play their Southern strategy, their racial Southern strategy to scare white folks in the suburbs to vote Republican. And they've just been doing this now for 60 years. It never stops. It doesn't matter what the crime stats say. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again. Of course, to your point, Roland, you're absolutely right with regard to the Department of Justice and Kristen Clarke. You've made the point several times before very correctly that the DOJ should really be playing up this work that they're doing in these spaces. Lexington, Mississippi in that situation sounded a hell of a lot like the Black Codes, which of course is not taught in most high schools, I suspect, but it's really just a remnant of the post-Civil War activity that we saw in the South. And the police department has become the arm of that activity. It kind of reminds me of the 2015 DOJ report by Attorney General Holder on Jennings on St. Louis County, which was extremely familiar to what Kristen Clarke just said, which played Roland. It was effectively the same report. They're using black people for fines and fees to fund everybody else, and through branding blacks to criminality. Wow, where did they get that idea from? Very familiar.
But here's the thing, Joy. I don't care if the number is 14%, 12%, 10%. No self-respecting black man or black woman should remotely even be considering voting for a thug who says, I'm going to withhold funding from local police departments unless they institute stop and frisk, which we know by the data targets black and brown people. And in New York City, the crazy number of people who were not even guilty of anything. It was racial profiling. When this man says we're going to target Marxist prosecutors, you know who he's talking about? Kim Foxx in Chicago. He's talking about, although she's no longer there, Aramis Ayala, who was in Orlando. The woman who took her place, same thing, who DeSantis pushed out. They're talking about Larry Krasner in Philadelphia. They're talking about the DA in Los Angeles. They're talking about every place, places in Virginia, places in New York City. They want to target progressive DAs because they want a hardcore, right-wing, lock them up and throw the key away prosecutors. So for all y'all black folks out here who are talking about the aftermath of George Floyd and y'all talking about how we get abused, this man wants to unleash law enforcement against this country, and he ain't talking about white people.
No, he's not. This is a reinstitution of slavery, right? And when you are chasing black people down in an effort to keep them in check and in line, this is what he's wanted. This is frankly what he's always wanted. Donald Trump has changed many of his positions over the years, but he's been pretty consistent. When you look at how he treated Central Park 5, some of the other positions he has taken, this person is not someone who cares about the average rank and file person who may come in contact with the justice system. In fact, he wants to unleash the justice system on all of those people, and in particular on black and brown people. And poor whites, he'll get you too. He will get you too, because all of the things that would deny you bail, all of the things that would impose economic crimes on you, would also, on black people, would also apply to you if you don't have the money to pay. So this is not anyone who is concerned about the rights of those within the criminal justice system who are interested in criminal justice reform. This is not anyone that you would want to put in. He's about celebrity, right? And he's about tricking you and thinking that you are not paying attention. And so, that's what this is about. And let me tell you, it's also a reminder of how important it is to have the right person in the Oval Office so that you can have the right person at all of the agencies across the country.
Yes.
You've said it before, Kristen Clarke is a national treasure. She has single-handedly sought justice for communities of color who have been abused. And let me tell you, if you are a community who is being abused out there by your police department, she has avenues for you to alert the Justice Department so that they can look into it. This is a person committed to justice.
Again, for everybody to understand, the president appoints the Attorney General. The Attorney General picks his or her team, and so who heads the Civil Rights Division, who heads the SEC, who heads, we could go on and on and on. So don't think for a second, folks, that who you vote for the presidency doesn't matter. That's who heads the EPA, Health and Human Services, the Pentagon. We can go on and on and on. So I'm going to say it again. No self-respecting black man or black woman should even remotely be thinking about voting for Donald Trump when that man plans to unleash law enforcement against black people in this country. And let me be real clear. I know some of y'all are saying, oh yeah, well, put the thugs in jail. 90% of those people who were going through stop and frisk, they were innocent.
IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.